The Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott just had a press conference earlier this afternoon. Bills Mafia, I want to talk about all that was happening in there. I've got 10 quotes in this video from that, but there's really one narrative I think that is the thread between the whole press conference is Sean McDermott got real with us, but he seems a little uneasy as a coach. Usually he's the disciplined. Usually he's the measured. Usually he's the high composure guy. He preaches that all the time. But underlying, I think this press conference, there seemed to be a little bit of irritability. There seemed to be something underneath that he's just not happy with where things are. And I think that's exactly where we are, Bills Mafia. I look at the comment section of my videos. I look at the comment section of maybe even some other content creator videos or Reddit or every which way where it doesn't matter. Bills Mafia is angry right now. We're upset. We're looking at our offense. We're looking at our defense. We're looking at Brandon Beane. We're looking at our coaching staff. There's so many things right now that we can point a finger to that we're uneasy about. Even in this press conference, there was a moment where Sean McDermott talked about the trouble areas. And he said in the press conference that there's a lot of positive things about our team, but none of us feel those things because of the gaping need and the gaping hole on so many areas of our team with penalties, with injuries, with, offensive woes, a lack of a receiver, issues in our linebackers, our cornerbacks, our safeties. There's so many issues that we could point to, and I'm just rattling these things off. But he, I think, in this press conference, pulled back the curtain a little bit, showing maybe a little bit more of his truer self. The coach, or really the man behind the coach, that he's wrestling with these expectations that Bills Mafia has and the ownership and maybe even Brandon Beane have over him. But it's a team battling injuries, that's battling inconsistency, and for us, a restless fan base that absolutely, one, I want to say deserves, I don't love that word, but deserves a championship and deserves better than something like we'll figure it out, right? Which is what I think what we've felt and what we've heard in years past. Today, I want to break all that down. I know that was a long intro rant. This isn't a rant video. I just want to report the news, but you guys know what I'm talking about. But again, my name is Colin. This is Crack the Table. We're all Bills, no breaks. Every single day, breaking down news from the Buffalo Bills, keeping us informed. And today, we're going to talk about some injuries. We're talking about this press conference, as you are already going to tell. But I want to get right into it. And I'm not going to play this clip for you, but here is one of, I think, the main things that I was getting from this. And it was near the end of the press conference. This was about a 15-minute press conference with him. And I know some other guys got some interviews, but in this, Sean McDermott talked about how his wife used to be a teacher, and if her classroom wasn't ready, if things weren't in a row, if the ducks weren't in a row, if we weren't ready to execute on our plan, then she would get itchy and fidgeting, and that he, in the bye week, was stressing out. He, as a coach, is worried, right? He just lost the last two games against, frankly, teams before the season. We were Vegas odds, whatever, if you keep up with that. We were planning to beat all of them based off odds. And again, you can't simulate games, but again, we look at this and he was fidgeting. He was worried. He spent his vacation by himself in his own thoughts, getting ready for the next week, trying to fix the issues on the team. He said, and I quote, he said this: "I had to get back in the film room and be alone with my thoughts." You don't hear that from a man who's one, strong, confident, very often, because you realize that the self-reflection that he is doing right now as a coach is emblematic of a worry in his heart about what is really going on with this team. Again, that's not something that you want to hear from your head coach. You could look all around the league and in the locker room celebrations and just these hype speeches. We just haven't had any of that really the last month. It feels like a month since we've seen actual Buffalo Bills football. But again, this season's been turbulent. And talking about just injuries here a moment, we've got some injury updates. Daquan Jones, Josh Palmer, Taylor Rapp, week to week. Rapp's knee injury apparently has been an issue since training camp, but maybe some positive news just right here. Of course, Maxwell Hairston's back. We heard that. But again, maybe some other things. Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt are back. They're getting back into it. But again, Sean McDermott admitting some of these things is a rare moment of vulnerability. It's not weakness. I think it's awareness. He talked about how players, again, like Daquan Jones and even like potentially bringing up Poyer onto the active roster are things that might happen, right? Taylor Rapp's knee is still enduring. He laid out the injury landscape for us, and he didn't really, he didn't go into all the details. He doesn't necessarily have to in the press conference, but he is, pragmatic with the way he's talking about those things consistently, but also within that whole conversation, he just acknowledged we've got players like key contributors who are not on the field, and that will decrease our level of discipline and execution on the field. Matt Milano's limited. Dalton Kincaid's limited. Curtis Samuel's limited. And also, of course, even though he's back at practice, Maxwell Harrison is limited, which is really the glimmer of hope that was talked about. Again, Sean McDermott is saying things like one day at a time. He says you want to get wins. You want to stack on short wins, not just victories in box scores, but day after day in practice, week after week. You want to build on these things, because the foundation of the team, when it's strong, can actually produce well, can actually be disciplined, can have accountability, and can actually produce well. Again, he mentioned for some of these newcomers, some of the Hoyt and Okunjobi, that there's conditioning pieces, there's physical pieces, and there's even schematic pieces that they finally, because the suspensions have been lifted, they can work through. Again, it's just a bunch of coach speak for saying, hey, they're getting there, but they're not going to be right here day one starters. They're not going to get right into it, but we'll see what happens on Sunday against the Panthers. But again, he's trying to continue to build the team while also trying to navigate the issues in mid-flight, which I don't know if you've ever heard this illustration before. If you've ever been trying to build something or grow something, sometimes you're trying to fly the plane, you're trying to move things forward, but you're trying to build things as you go. And the phrase is, you're trying to build the plane as you're flying it, right? Sean McDermott is in the middle of the season trying to build, maintain, repair. There's pieces that are falling off. There's schematic issues. There's injury issues. There is coaching issues. There's even just a handful of things going around and wrong in the organization. He's trying to fix them as we go. But then Sean McDermott kind of shifted to some self-scouting and self-accountability, and his tone changed, right? He talks about how self-scouting gives clarity on where we are at and where we need to grow, and positively and negatively, which was a quote. And then came the line that I think defined the press conference, which I've quoted here in the thumbnail, is this. He says, we're capable of performing at a higher level, the detail and the discipline that lead to execution, and we're not there consistently enough. I love when a coach can be honest. I love when a coach can be humble enough to just say, hey, we're not where we want to be. And again, I don't think it's just, hey, we're going to fix it. He himself is taking ownership, and we want to see that out of any leader that we're ever going to follow, right? That's about as honest as we're going to get. That's about as much honesty as we're going to get from a coach. And for a coach who's built on process and execution, to admit that the detail and the discipline are missing is to take ownership himself of the issues. And that for him is an internal challenge, which again, when we go back to like the itching and the fidgeting, he's taking ownership of that. He was in the film room by himself trying to figure these things out. He even goes on to say, and I quote, we have the talent, but the talent isn't enough if the little things keep slipping. And that's where he started to talk about some of these issues with the penalties and how we've been beating ourselves. And there's some things with these penalties that we can fix. Like some of it is just a technique issue, or we need to release if we're going to hold somebody, or there was a handful of things he talked about in this, but he also talked about this, which I think this is a testament, and this is a word to Bills Mafia right now, is this. And I quote, you get too far ahead of yourself when you look to the past, or you lose focus if you're looking too far forward. And so you have to be focused on where you're at, how we can win today, and how we can move forward as a football team. He said, versions of this for years, but this time it didn't sound like a motto. It sounded more like a plea. It sounded more like, hey, the only way that we're going to step forward is if we put one foot ahead of each other. We can't be overlooking these teams anymore. We cannot be overlooking the Falcons. We cannot be overlooking the Patriots. We have the Panthers right in front of us. We need to go to work, and we need to beat this team. Again, Sean McDermott didn't hold back addressing even some specific issues. He said there's a lot of there's a lot of areas to improve. He said this, and Bills Mafia, I just want to acknowledge this. You're calling for receivers, you're calling for this, you're calling for that. They know it. He said this. He says, you name it, we look at it, we owe it to our team, and we owe it to our fans. That phrase, we owe it to our fans, I think it really hit hard. It hit hard for me. He knows these things that we complain about, these things that we talk about, he's aware of them. he was even just talking again more and more about like the penalties and the difficulties. He says you got to get yourself in position, talking about the holding penalties. You got to move your feet. You got to establish your position. If you lose leverage, you got to let go. And you know what? If it doesn't happen right, it's a player issue. Secondarily, it's a coaching issue. And you know what? We've got to fix those things going into the rest of this season. There's a lot of things for our team to improve on, but he says again, there's a lot of positives to our team. But in all of this, the Buffalo Bills aren't unraveling, but Sean McDermott is really trying to knit this thing back together. He is evolving and developing, I think, as a coach and as a man. This press conference, I think, was a subtle reminder that he's human, a subtle reminder that this coach is owning the moment, the fact that they just are coming off 2 losses, and he's recalibrating his tone, and I think recentering the locker room on winning football. Again, for us as fans, that's reassuring because honesty builds trust, and for players, it's challenge for more discipline, for more accountability, for more execution on the field when it matters most. And again, there's so many details and so many things we could talk about this, but I hope that breakdown just helps you out today. But again, McDermott was getting real in this press conference, and maybe, just maybe, this team is turning a corner. I hope so. I still want to trade for somebody. I still think there's the potential there. We'll see if anything happens this week. The trade deadline's coming up next Tuesday, November the 4th. So I guess 2 Tuesdays from now. But the Buffalo Bills football team needs more and more help and more consistency as they go into this next leg of the season. But again, my name is Colin. This is Crack the Table. We are all Bills, no breaks, every single day, just breaking down Buffalo Bills content. So if you like content just like this, make sure to like, subscribe, follow us. God bless. Go Bills. Peace out, friends.